And it says we're live. Welcome, my friend. It's 2 p.m. on the 23rd of the 4th, Thursday. I got that right. The last time we did a show, both you and I didn't know what the day was.
Yeah.
No, it's always a pleasure catching up with you. I know that you're on a tight schedule that we'll only be chatting for 45 minutes. So the way that you and I tend to chin wag, 45 minutes is going to go by quite fast. But it's good hearing that you're going to be back on board. So I'll just have a couple of seconds here, bit of a chat saying that a couple of things, and then I'll let you go for it. But I got some good feedback on the show that we did the other day on the Blues Breakers. I got some good feedback. I got some positive feedback from Simon too. Simon wants to add to this conversation, so he's got some information that he wants to share that he was going to talk about last night when I did a show with Great Van Zanny and him. But I said, what we need to keep that information for a show that you and I and him do together, maybe next week or the week after, because we don't want to be running too many shows on the same thing, you know. So if we can sort of keep that, you know, that information on Mike Vernon, because that story is going to be a continuing saga, I think, as information comes through, as we find information, as information becomes available. Arvin, my friend, good evening. Good to see you. Arvin's always leaving positive messages for us. And Arvin, if I haven't said anything to you lately, you always have an open invitation for joining Simon and I, or Carl and I, or the three of us when we're on. So keep that up your sleeve. Always appreciate your positive feedback and your support. How are you, buddy? How are you, Carl? Are you looking forward to going back to work?
Oh, yeah, next week it's on. Yeah, no, I've got a few little appointments already set up. It'll just be unfortunately a bit of a slow transition, but at least it's a start.
Yeah.
But hey, I mean, looking at the graphs around the world, New Zealand's done quite well. It's been like this. So I think there's a feeling of that people are a bit more relaxed now. So yeah, just a day-to-day monitoring thing. But yeah, it'll be there's a few jokes running online about they're going to be needing security at the KFC.
Oh, well, look, you know, I'm certainly looking forward to going out and having some takeaway food too. You know, I'm keen to admit that. But look, I think at the end of the day, you know, we're all growing men here. We all understand that business is an important thing. These 4 weeks that I've had off haven't been enjoyable, haven't been like my Christmas break. You know, number one, we haven't been able to go anywhere, you know, for a starter. And you know, I think we've all been anxious about what's going to happen, whether or not, you know, we're going to have the zombie apocalypse or, you know, but yeah. When I watch the news, I think we are lucky.
Yeah, I've got a newfound perspective on the news, the media, and how they, I wouldn't say dictate, but how they portray what they think is happening, which they don't know what's happening. You know, so I'm actually happy in my bubble in the sense that, and you've got a great bubble too. That you've got your family, we've got great city, great country, and we'll get through this as a community. And I sincerely hope our brothers overseas and sisters in Canada and Bristol and Texas and all those places that tune in, I sincerely hope they're finding some sort of normality and getting back in the swing of things.
I think what you're raising is a good point, because at the beginning of last night's show, Simon and I were talking about a couple of things, and one of the things that I wanted to make clear in a conversation that I was having with Simon about what these English guys were doing as far as, you know, breaking the mold and experimenting as far as music was concerned. um, I I think had everything to do with the fact that they were British, that they were Anglo-Saxon, that we've got that move ahead mentality. New Zealand is we're in that category. The Canadians are in that category. The North Americans are in that category. Australians. Let's let's just move ahead. I think what's going to happen, though, I was watching a program this morning while I was having my coffee, and the traditional partnerships that we've had will be reinforced again. In relation to Australia, these Australians were talking about it. They were fostering a stronger relationship with North America now. They were going to bypass the other big major player. And I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with historic relationships and historic ties. I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, I mean, the Commonwealth is the Commonwealth. We got to, it's who we are. It's people love to come to these countries. They come to these countries for a reason, because of what we've instilled through the generations of camaraderie, allies. Ain't nothing to get on a ship and defend something, namely freedom.
Yeah.
Or anti-tyranny, anti-communism,
Well, that's the point that I made on some social media posts. I was saying, what is it that generational New Zealanders get? We've got stake in this place. In my family and in your family, we've had blood spilt defending our way of life overseas. Fighting against bad bastards. And I don't take that for granted. I take the fact that I'm a New Zealander very seriously. I love my country. Yeah.
Good. Yeah. No, and I when I went overseas, I saw similarities in how they think and what they believe in, which is fundamentally the same as us, which is good.
Oh, I spoke about you too last night a few times in our show. I mentioned the fact that you were. I hope you don't mind. I let a few of your family secrets out about how you went to.
Is this the criminal background?
No, it's not the criminal. No. I didn't. No. No. But I mentioned on the show last night about how you went to America, and one of the reasons why, obviously was through music. And I remember you saying to me that you were just blown away by how many young cats were out there that we could just flicking off these Stevie Ray Vaughan licks, And I also said too how you were playing in some bands over there, and that you guys were playing for tips. You'd go to bars, all the PA system, all the band gear will be there. All you do is just turn up with your guitar, and if you were good, you would make some money, which is a good thing. Sonia in the chat said that's very much still carrying on in Austin today. It's a big thing in Austin today still, playing for tips. And if you're really good, you can do well.
Yeah. We call a jug of beer a big handle. Over there they call it a pitcher, and a waitress or maybe an affiliate of the band, normally a female, mainly most of the time attractive, would carry it around. It's very competitive, very tough. I mean, they've got to really do a lot of work to get, because there's a lot of bands doing the same thing. But hey, it was a good experience. It was. On any given night, a band would be playing somewhere, somehow. I'm fortunate I got to see the tail end of the Chicago Blues era before they all died.
Oh yeah, and before I carry on, you're looking pretty good. So your conference calls that you're going to have this afternoon, you're looking pretty well. You've got your hair slicked back there. You've shaved. You're looking professional for a change.
I kind of wished I'd kept that really scruffy, ugly amateur beard, because there was about 2 or 3 of guys that had basically looked like they've gone bush for 3 weeks, and it would have been a bit of a laugh if I've attempted to show my Grizzly Adams, Yeah.
And
here's a funny story for you. And this guy, we think he's a clown. I won't mention his name, but he grew one of those kind of Pierre the Chef moustaches, Zorro.
Yeah.
I felt like saying, "Hey, listen, you look like the lead singer from Village People." Because my camera wasn't working, I had all these jokes lined up, like saying, "Well, you better be careful. The police might pull you over in your car for traffic problem." You know, that thing's scary. And the director says, "What the hell? You got a slug sleeping on your top lip." So certain people like yourself, suit moustaches or goatees. This guy just looks. Yeah. No, it was funny. That's all.
Yeah, and I also mentioned too, Arvin's reminded me in the chat too, I mentioned that you played with Luann Barton in Texas too. So
no, I just met her and we hung out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I stretched that story then.
Oh,
okay.
That's cool.
But when you said met her, I assumed that you guys jammed and played.
No, not that good. No.
Okay.
I got the shock. I got the shock of my life though. That all that stuff that she was doing in the late 70s with Stereo Vaughan.
Yeah.
Roll up to a place called the Saxon Pub, met her, and she did her set. It was all the same music. So 30 years later, the same stuff. I just couldn't believe it.
Well, you know, that tribute stuff's always going to be in demand, isn't it? You know, I was just watching a show before we came on air, Nerd Halen, you know, which is a guy called Caleb that we know through social media that's formed a band, and you know they're singing Van Halen songs from the David Lee Roth era. You know, that's 30, 40 years.
Yeah. Well, that's obviously a dedicated cover band, but I thought she was actually an artist that kept putting out new material, but she just did the stuff from the 70s, and I was like, okay. And then you see her every time she's doing the same set list. Nothing. So yeah, but interesting lady. Wow, you know, a set of pipes on her. Her, Angela Straley, and Marsha Ball were the three big singers at that particular time.
Okay,
really
all
good,
right.
really good singers here.
Okay, well, thank you for correcting me, because in my story I said that you played with her. So
no. No, she's a very good singer. That's for sure. But no, those guys are all pretty much Fender Strat plugged into Fender amps. It's pretty much the dominant sound. I'm actually glad that Gary Clark kind of broke the norm and he loves his Gibsons.
Well, wasn't he originally though playing Strats? He was originally playing Strats for a long time. I've got clips of him on YouTube playing Strats, and then he went to Epiphone, got a deal with Epiphone, and he's playing casinos, Epiphone casinos, off the rack, nothing special.
Wow. Yeah, he was playing out of necessity at the time, a fairly not a budget guitar, but a cheaper guitar for a long time, but obviously suited him and it sounded good. And then I didn't see him with the Strat, but I'm happy that he loves his Gibsons, because after a while in Austin, you just get sick and tired of Strats and doing the 12-bar shuffle and that Stevie sound. It's just, and 64-bar solos, just not my thing. I'm glad. That's yeah. But what else? Yeah, no, that's good. I really enjoyed watching that little YouTube video sent of the Basement on 10. So basically, that tells me that Stevie, Jimi Hendrix, probably Robert, Jimmy Page, obviously most definitely Eric Clapton, they all played those amps at max volume.
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
When I hear that Strap going through that Basement at 10 and him doing that Red House intro, it obviously Hendrix licks, but you could hear that Hendrix sound right off the bat. You know, that weight of the sound. So obviously Hendrix, all those guys are in the same vein. They're playing those amps loud.
And Arvin, for reference, the video clip that I'm talking about and Carl's talking about, it's from Texas Blues Alley. Anthony uploaded a video where he's got a 66 or a 67 Fender Basement head that was his dad's, and he's basically cranking it at number 10. But it's interesting you should say that, because in last night's chat, I had Gussie Wells on asking me about some issues that I was having with my Marshall. And I fixed the issue by turning everything up to 10. So, and playing that through my aux box. So you're absolutely right. To get the tone that you want, you gotta turn everything up to 10. If you're lucky to have an attenuator, you can just drop it back a bit. But certainly you gotta ride the volume on your guitar.
Yeah, so they probably would have maybe at 10 or maybe at 9, but where does that give them more of an equalizer on their tone and volume controls on the guitar to quieten it down or soften it?
Yeah.
So basically that's why they're fiddling a lot. You see Stevie Vaughan all the time basically being a mixer on his little tone and volumes. Because obviously his amp is where it's at, which is obviously loud. Because Eric Clapton basically said on record, and it's actually a quote, that the first time he saw Stevie, couldn't handle it.
Yeah. So Jimi Hendrix is doing the same thing too. I mentioned that in last night's show. You see Jimmy, he's always fiddling with his volume. Always. So his Marshall clearly was always on 10.
Yeah. So in order for them to do the guitar solos and stuff, they're winding it back to maybe 5 on the volume control, and then obviously Stevie had that little booster. Okay. Moustaches, avant-garde. Yeah. Oh, this moustache was just hilarious.
So just hold on for 1 second. So this guy here in his book, Andy Aldorf, he's made a reference in there. The first time he went and saw Stevie Ray Vaughan, it was loud. He was playing in a small, so it's well known. It's a well-known fact that he was playing loud. So he was in a small venue somewhere where it would be half the volume. Normally, any other band would be half the volume, but Stevie Ray Vaughan just had to play loud. He had to lean against the sound.
Wow. One of the best lessons I ever learned about sound is not the guitar, not the amp, but the room. So in California, I bought this Tweed tube amp, maybe 15 watts or 25 or 30, I'm not sure. Nice and sweet, just a generic Tweed valve amp. It wasn't a Fender. It was just because there's so many amps over there that are just Fender copies that are half the price that sound almost as good, maybe the same. I'm not sure, but so I was playing it. Everything was fine. Moved to this new house in Austin, Texas, big living room. No one was home. Put the amp in the room, plugged it in. The sound was gone. So I went from a small room with a small amp to a bigger room with the same amp, and it was just
crap.
I had to buy a bigger amp.
Yeah.
So room placement is really so your room size is really important too. Yeah, so it'd be quite interesting to see Stevie. I'm not sure what he would have done, or Eric or Jimmy Page, or any of those guys. Maybe they had an engineer or a guitar tech that would have to adjust their sound according to the venue size, whether it be small club, medium club, outdoors. I wouldn't have a clue.
Yeah, I don't know either. Early on, it was certainly their own mixing themselves. That was responsible for a lot of the tonal qualities they were getting. But as venues developed and had PA gear and they had sound men or sound, I don't know. I think one thing for Cream, for example, is they just played it safe. Everything was on 10 wherever they went. There was no cut the mid back or drop the mids or put treble.
Yeah, wow, it's incredible. Deep Purple's the same. I mean, Black Sabbath. I mean, what was Black Sabbath using as amps?
They were using orange amps there for a while, and Marshalls, and
right. Yeah. So getting back to Eric with the Bluesbreaker amp and then louder, that's what kind of started, I think, English rock. Was basically everything became louder and the beat became a bit faster. Just, Eric went from blues to jazz, blues, rock to, obviously rock, then back to Derek and the Dynamos, but rock through the 70s. We all know that Black Sabbath started out as Cream. Cream was their guy, their band. Deep Purple, the same. I mean, when stuff gets louder, it seems to get faster too.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So
yeah, that's yeah.
I'm just thinking. Where the black guys in America traditionally just stuck with the blues. They changed it around. It was a great small room. Yeah, that makes sense. Yep. Yeah, it's frustrating, eh? You have a sweet spot, and that's just music. That's just anything in life. Maybe like a comedian at a certain audience where the jokes were going great the night before, the jokes not going that good today. Just room, ambience, energy, mood, everything. It's part of being a musician or a performer at least.
Well, it's the same thing with me too. Let's be fair. I'll come home from work. I'll pick up my guitar. I'll plug it in, and I've done nothing to my amp, nothing to my settings, and I just sound like shit.
Yeah.
Whether it's my emotional response to what I'm playing, I don't know. I don't want to over emotionalize or make it extremely scientific. But then, I remember a couple of years ago, I had this. I got the first generation Yamaha THR amp, and I remember I put it onto the classic British settings, and I put some reverb on. I grabbed my Les Paul copy, and I was playing along to some jam tracks, and I swore that the sound that I had was that Fleetwood Mac sound that they were getting from the Shrine album. I stood there and I was amazed with myself, going, wow, this is so great. I wish I could bottle it. And the next day, I picked up the same guitar, the same amp settings, and it wasn't. I wasn't listening to what I was playing.
What I've learned is just really appreciate it when it's good, and then just don't get bummed out when it's not so good. Don't break your guitar. Don't do a Pete Townsend. That'd be quite expensive. Yeah. Golly. Far out. No, it's the temperature. I remember Mike Buck, the original drummer for Fabulous Thunderbirds. He came up to us. It was really nice that he chatted to us. We're at an outdoor venue on Congress Ave, and just an awesome little band. It was the Leroy Brothers, and he just said it was windy that day, and he said, "Oh, you said, Carl, it's just you just can never pick it playing outdoors. The wind can have a factor. It's just that's why you got to, I guess, see lots of shows, because the law of averages. You're going to see some bummers, and you're going to see some amazing ones. Just keep going. I remember watching this lady, Barbara Lynn, a huge Texas icon. Her famous song was "You'll Lose a Good Thing."
Yep.
And one night she just couldn't do it. She couldn't sing. The guitar kept going out of tune. The sound was off, and she was just struggling. And she's been doing this 40, 50 years. Just life.
Yeah.
The next night you see them, it's just a different story.
Yeah. You're right. So what's like? It might be imagining things, but sometimes I swear in my ears different. Yeah. You're right, Harvin. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I was doing some riffs, playing along to Keith Richards' solo of "Sympathy for the Devil" on Get Your Yayas Out through my ES 355, and man, I was sounding good. Again, same thing. Sounding, wow, this tone is great. A couple of days later, you go, it just sounds like crap.
Well, I don't know. What were you on? Coffee, pharmaceuticals?
Oh no. Yeah. No, I'm straight. I'm straight edge now these days, mate. Chocolate and coffee. That's all I do.
Cocoa.
You got it, brother. You got it.
Cocoa plants. Oh no, it's even. I mean, I've seen Eric Clapton sound average, and he sounded a lot through the 70s. I've seen Jimmy Vaughan play, and I'm like, did he just learn yesterday? Couldn't believe it. And then you see him another day, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. I was watching the Black Crows. Big Black Crows fan. Love them. Love the Black Crows. Just very happy that the two brothers have managed to mend their past. Unfortunately, they had to put their reunion concerts on hold. Hopefully with this downtime, they might be working on a new album or doing something together. But you look at some of the clips in the early 1990s and even in the early 2000s before they pulled the plug. Man, they got some. That Chris Robertson, he can sound really good, mate. And then you go and watch these half a dozen shows on YouTube, mate, where he sounds like absolute shit.
Wow. And it's, once again, I mean, like Elvis Presley, these guys are just only human. I remember this talk with this girl, and she goes, and I was telling her about a celebrity that I'd met. She goes, I don't get starstruck. The word she used was starstruck. And that's a great attitude to have, not to be starstruck.
Yeah. So, Simon asked me last night, he said, because I saw Van Halen in 1998, and because he's not
really?
Van Halen. Yeah.
Oh, up in Auckland. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And,
how was it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was good. And well, because I'm a fanboy, and I didn't realize, though, until about 15 years later, 20 years later, that actually, that whole tour was pretty good. And there's a YouTube show of him playing in Sydney 2 weeks or a week after that show, and he sounds pretty good. But if you're a Van Halen nut, in 2004, Eddie was on meth off his nut and playing badly. And again, there's plenty of shows on YouTube where he's just playing the wrong song, Yeah, it's bad.
A bit like Slash in the wrong key to the opening of Welcome to the Jungle. You seen that one on YouTube?
Yeah.
Even Hendrix. When I was a big Hendrix fan, he I can't tell you how many shows where he was just way off. It's the Stones in the 75, 76 tour.
Oh, that 75 tour. Oh, yeah.
Terrible.
Terrible.
We just got it. We're so happy that they did so many shows that we can cherry pick some of the good ones. I mean, we're so fortunate that live at the Alma Combo with all those gigs that Steve Ray Vaughan did, and Tommy even remembered that because most of it was a blur, not because of the drugs, because they did so many shows. He said, I'm so glad the camera crew happened just to be there recording the previous show and caught us because we were on fire that night.
That's correct.
So, yeah. So, it's interesting. It really is, amps, the certain day, the certain mood, the band. That's why practice is so important. That's why the Beatles and the Stones were so good, because even though they are only human and they have their off nights, because they've played so much, there's always going to be a certain gelling aspect.
Well, that's correct. And I suppose at the end of the day, too, there's this history and this legacy of they certainly weren't in the category of show bands, but there was this expectation that, you were going to play for 45 minutes or an hour, or, early on, some of those sets that they played when they got famous were quite short. But if you look at what the Stones were playing, they were playing 4-hour sets, on some of these clubs, and we all know that the Beatles were playing all night, just phenomenal. So if you're playing all night for 3 months of the year, you're going to be pretty good, aren't you?
Absolutely. You fall into that pocket. There's a song that they did, which I heard. I mean, at 19, 18, they're doing things like Besame Mucho and stuff like
Yes.
that. I mean, just Spanish songs and jazz standards and American American folk songs, and just wow, songs they call the American songbook. Yeah, the songbook. That's the word. Traditional songs, which they call songbook. So, but yeah, no. So when you saw Van Halen, was it obviously because you're a big Sammy guy? It was Sammy, not David, or was it David?
No, it was Gary Sharon. But
okay.
Yeah. And I remember being a little bit disappointed that it wasn't Sammy Hagar. I certainly do remember that.
Okay.
But
you take what you can get with Van Halen, with New Zealand being way down the bottom.
Yeah. Clearly, the fact that you were going to see Van Halen, certainly, 90% of the people there were there for Eddie Van Halen. So
they had obviously the brothers, the bass player, but they've had the same drummer the whole time.
Yeah. Alex Van Halen. Yep.
Oh, so is it three brothers?
No, two brothers. Eddie Van Halen, Alex Van Halen.
Who's
Michael
the drummer?
Anthony, Alex Van Halen.
Oh, so the bass player is the Michael Anthony. Yep. Okay.
Yeah, Michael Anthony. Yeah.
So it doesn't matter which singer's there. That machine will always be in the background.
Oh yeah. Look, next year, the FUCK for Unlawful Carnal Knowledge album is going to be 30 years old, and
wow.
And I'm going to do a show on that album because it came out in 1991 and it was a huge album for me. So you can come along and be part of a tribute show that I'm going to do, talking about that album. But
did you like that song called Right Now, that political song with all the stuff coming on the TV screen?
Yeah, loved that album. Loved it. Still do.
Did you like that song?
Yeah.
Okay,
love
cool.
it.
Yeah, that made a big impact. That was it. Yeah.
Loved the album. Certainly you're right. You take what you can get. And you be accepting of it. But I suppose the great thing about us is that we were witnessing Eddie Van Halen when he was relatively clean, and that tour was well known for him sounding really good. He was playing really, really well. And we've lost Carl, or have we lost me? Because I can see someone spinning around, so it looks like we've lost Carl, but that's okay. But so Arvin and Sonia, if you guys are Van Halen nuts, we've got 7 months to prepare for the 30th anniversary of for unlawful carnal knowledge. Here he is. How's it going?
Just don't know what happened. What amps did Eddie use?
He was using Peavy's then.
And once again, he's the sort of guy that probably has everything on 10.
Oh, yeah. Because he's using a lot of effects. Yeah, absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. So he's everything's on 10.
So pretty much come to the conclusion most of these guys have their amps loud.
Yeah.
So that's going to be the foundation of your natural distortion. Obviously there might be a clean channel, and then the effects, if you're that sort of person, just adds to that.
Yeah. No, I think you're right.
Yeah.
You got to crank everything up, and that's one of the reasons why distortion pedals became so important in the market for a lot of people, because it meant that you could get that crunch at a bedroom level on your Fender Vibrolux. So, instead of turning this up to 10, which is what you have to get that natural overdrive, you can't play this on 10. No. It's impossible. I can't sit here and play Layla with that on 10, or Sunshine of Your Love, but I can plug that through an overdrive, can't I? Get a bit of natural crunch, have that turned on 3, and it's going to be good.
Well, it's going to help the windows and the neighbours and your ears. But I tell you what, though. So the guy I played with, his dad played, and he had a couple of Strats. He had a original Fender Twin Reverb. Are they 410s or 212s?
The Bassmans are 410s.
Fender Twin Reverbs, which that was
the Fender, no, the 12s. I'm sure they're 12s.
Two 12s.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was Peter Green's go-to amp, I think, the Fender Twin Reverb. But I think they were louder than the 410s. They were 100 watts.
Yes.
100 watts from memory.
Yeah.
But we could only get that to about 3 before it was just too loud. But looking back now, obviously, because I don't know much about the Blues Breakers album, I knew a little bit about it, just didn't know. But I kind of wished we'd played louder, but played more control with our hands, because that's what makes Stevie Ray Vaughan so amazing.
Yeah,
everything is loud. It's pretty clean, and the slightest mistake, you could hear it. He's doing all that stuff, all those tricks. Hendrix is probably the same. Basically see-through, transparent, naked. Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Oh, yeah.
Is that studio still open? The Decca studio where Eric did that recording?
I do not know. That's some research we can do. I do not know.
It'd be great to just, I know that people visit certain studios or Abbey Road or stuff like that. It'd be great to just maybe be in that room and just say, wow, this is the size of it. That was not a big room.
Well, I'm going to take a punt and say it probably isn't, because if it was, we would know about it. We know that people go to Abbey Road, but I'm going to take a punt and say it probably doesn't exist. No, I can't answer that question at the moment. That's some research.
Oh no, just I thought I'd throw it out there. No, that's really interesting. I learned a lot from that video you sent 2 days ago about Eric's gradual process from one band, one amp, Tele, Gibson, a room, Mike Vernon, John Mayall giving him the freedom, then everything else to this day is just history. It's like, wow. So
yeah, I wanted to use your line last night a couple of times in the show. I think you've said it to me a few times, that the stars all aligned.
Yeah. And a lot of it is just by sheer accident or experimentation. A lot of these people have these ideas, but it's just like the Beatles, or Rolling Stones meeting at Dartford, Brian meeting Alex Corner, or just whatever.
Okay, well, I picked this book up, and I've mentioned this book a few times, and to be fair, I haven't read all the chapters in this book. I've only read what's been, obviously relevant to my interest, or doing some research for myself in relation to a lot of the bands. But I didn't realize until a couple of days ago that Mike Vernon sang vocals with the Yardbirds when Keith Ralph had laryngitis. So he had asthma as well. So there were a lot of issues around his ability to perform as a vocalist for the band. So they had Mike Vernon sing a lot of the slow blues stuff. And Eric Clapton loved it when Mike Vernon would sing, because it gave Eric Clapton that time to extend and to play some of those solos. So again, this is part of the archaeology that we're doing. So we all got the impression that Mike Vernon met Eric Clapton, when he walked into the studio with John Mayall. That's not true. They knew each other. They'd been on stage long before then. You know, Mike Vernon had an idea of what Eric Clapton could and couldn't do.
Wow. Well, it would have been a small circle, that blues circle, but obviously Mike had basically an ace up his sleeve. He had basically Eric. He wanted to basically put Eric on a bigger stage. So maybe he was instrumental in helping him leave the Yardbirds as well.
Well, that's the question I want to ask you. Yeah. You know, was he a kingmaker between Clapton and Mayall? Because remember, Vernon knew Mayall too early on. So,
if Mike Vernon was working for Decca and Mayall was already signed to Decca, and then they did that Klukes Clique and it didn't sell well, and John was possibly turning into a fossil, it only made sense for Mike to basically liaise, be the middleman, broker the deal, you know, say, hey, listen, you know, Yardbirds, I think, were managed by Giorgio Golomiski, and they wanted a poppy radio hit, didn't they? And they got that hit. But if you're a blues purist, and there's the running joke was a harpsichord and congas on the song, and Eric was like, what the hell? Is this a circus? I'm not a clown. So for contractual obligations, he finished out with that song, and that was that.
Yeah. Well, there's some more information to that story too that became I became conscious of for about 18 months ago, and I think we've mentioned it on some early shows that you and I have done. So Paul Samuel Smith didn't like Eric Clapton. Jim McCarthy, the drummer, didn't like Eric. So you know, they didn't like him because these guys weren't working class. Eric Clapton was the only working class guy in that band, and these other guys were a little bit, you know, Paul Samuel Smith. They
quite mod.
Yeah. And if you go and have a look at some of the videos, some of the interviews, there's a DVD that I've got, Eric Clapton, the review in the 60s, and they're interviewing Chris Strager, the other guitar, you know, and you know that it's very clear that they didn't like each other as well.
Jealousy, or just different musical direction?
Well, I think what we have to remember is that class thing's a big deal in the UK, isn't it? You know, it's a big deal. You know,
in London, you have 3 different types of accents, don't you? You got the Cockney, working class, upper crust. You know, it's interesting.
Yeah. But you know, so Eric's time in that band was, you know, clearly it was, you know, it was going to end. You know, you've got 3 guys that just didn't like Eric Clapton, and the fact too that he was getting a following, it pissed Samuel Smith off and the other guitar player, because 90% of the people were coming and they were fighting. These guys were fighting to get to Eric Clapton's side of the stage.
But Eric did them a favour about moving forward in the next 6 years. Was the Yardbirds came conclusion, we've got to have a hot guitarist to replace Eric, because otherwise we're just going to fizzle out.
Well, that's right.
Hence the Jeff Becks, the Jimmy Page.
Yeah, but obviously they got someone with a personality that they thought that they could handle, that they could manipulate, they could manage. You know, we've all worked with people that we haven't liked. You know,
it's apparent in my office space. There's a couple of people that went to St. Paul's, and we're just on different levels.
Yeah,
you know, they're narwhals, condescending. They are what else? Self-righteous, entitled, and probably the most important word with entitled.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
it's just how it is. You know, their parents' idea of disciplining them was naughty boy. Here's a gift. Here's $100. You know, that's your discipline.
So that attitude, just imagine that attitude being in a band on a 6x4 stage. You know, for
horrible.
hours.
Be horrible.
Just imagine standing next to a bass player that you couldn't stand for 4 hours.
So that's why the Rolling Stones, apart from Brian, I think Brian carried it quite well. We're all pretty much of the same accord. Beatles, all pretty much of the same accord, right?
Yeah.
You know, case in point, Black Sabbath, working class Birmingham, Animals, probably the same. I mean, yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. Bob Marley and the Wailers all had an ideology that they believed in, which is obviously Rasta music, Rastafari, the religion, and human rights, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, and I think it becomes a lot easier too for history and storytelling to say the reason why Eric Clapton left is because he wanted to play the blues. Now certainly there was an aspect of that, and so that's acceptable, and no one's critical of the guys in the Yardbirds, and Eric Clapton ran off and did his thing. But to say, well, there was a class tension there between 3 members of the Yardbirds and Eric Clapton, being a bricklayer's assistant from Ripley,
Oh, wow. Yeah. And also a not necessarily a stowaway, but a red-headed stepchild. Not necessarily adoptee, but a bit of a castaway in his grandmother's house in a small house. But isn't it amazing? Apparently, I read that Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, and Eric all lived in this, was it 10-kilometer or 3-kilometer radius, or unbelievable?
Yeah. That's your stars aligning theory again.
Yeah, it's just there's something in the air. There's something in the water, or some kind of. Same in New Zealand. For some reason, in West Auckland and West Hamilton, it seems to be a lot of mullet, haircuts, Holdens, and heavy metal. Westie, I think they call it.
It's currently in use by Universal Music Group worldwide. That is possible because Universal Studios, which officially dropped MCA name after Seagram buyout in '96, acquired Polygram, the British Decca parent company, in 1998. Yeah, okay. So clearly Decca doesn't exist.
Those musical companies are evil. They're basically pretty much all monopolized. Sony, Universal, MCA. They're owned by about 3 separate people: Lucian Grange, Clive Davis, and there's someone else. Because you signed to a label, but it's a subsidiary of a bigger label, which is owned by a parent company. So gone to the small.
So Arvin's agreeing too. Yeah, history never mentions that he left because he thought the other guys were assholes. So clearly Arvin's heard that too. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Hey, I've had quite a few phone calls come through.
No problem.
Yeah, I've got to get the Zoom thing too. So the good news is my branch manager's out of ICU and he's in the cardiac ward.
Cool.
So
with you. See you in a couple of days.
Yeah. No, good, nice brief show. I mean, hey, listen, it's unbelievable. You can talk about a sound or an amp and it just 45 minutes goes by quick.
It's always a pleasure hanging out with you, my friend. I wish you well.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for joining us. And Simon and I will be on in a few days' time with Great Vanzini, but Carl and I probably do something on Saturday.
Yep. Let's see how it goes. Yeah, for sure.
Cheers, mate.
Hey, have a good night. Good day. Thanks, guys, everybody.